Hello, I'm James Murphy, Editor-in-Chief at Movie Viral. This is the first episode of our PolitFlix podcast. The idea being to unite the themes of politics and film, using one as a platform to discuss the other, but also perhaps as an area of escape when things get too contentious. Our guests for this first episode include Terry Bamber, a man whose CV speaks for itself, quite frankly. He is a veteran of several of the James Bond films, amongst other things. Look him up, you'll be in awe. We've also got Dave Bond, who is a walking masterclass in how to do a retrospective on film, and Lorella MacDonald, who's an expert on the more aesthetic sides of film. So I hope you enjoy this. Take it away. And the idea is a quick run-through of certain news items, be they film or politics, non-contentious, although movies and politics by their very nature are both.
James, everything you talk about is contentious.
That's not true. I resent that.
I've seen your Facebook posts.
Oh, well, that was that. It's been hacked several times by someone who looks a lot like me and knows one of my passwords.
You keep changing your friggin' account because I called you someone with an attitude problem.
That's true. And then a brief look at a thematic point that unites the two topics. And if it works, terrific. There will be sequels. If it doesn't, we will just call it the Dark Universe. So
just rethink, James. It takes a bit of practice.
Yes, we can reboot the franchise several times. So
I like this creative spirit.
Exactly. So there's four of us, Dave. We'll start with Terry because Terry can be taken away by his fish and chips at any point. So Terry, if you just give us a quick introduction as to who you are, what you want to talk about, what you're willing to talk about politically or cinematically, that would be great.
Well, basically, I love Facebook because it gives a chance for people to air their grievances and air their points of view. I like to use Facebook for spreading, I know this sounds so corny, but to spread laughter and to spread kindness. But because I work in films and television, one comes across all sorts of people that you think you're getting on with, and you're being stabbed in the back while they're smiling in the face. And the sad thing with what's happened the last couple of weeks is suddenly the whole of living in the UK has taken on being in a film. I mean, it's just unbelievable that it can't be that long before they will make a film about this awful incident with the Grenfell Tower and this bloody cladding. And It's just quite beyond me how anybody can develop something that is flammable and then propose to put that in a building higher than a bungalow. I mean, not even in a bungalow you shouldn't go into. So that's really played on my mind a lot and been part of my Facebook posts and Twitter posts recently. But I do believe in films and television. I do believe in them having a voice for the good, not just the mass pop stuff they do with the Marvel comics and all those films. And there's some great films out there at the moment. But I think that these incidents in the last few weeks will end up having films made about them.
Right.
And hopefully the people that have let everybody down will get served justice. It's just unbelievable.
Now, you were very altruistic there, and that's lovely, but you forgot to big yourself up, Terry. For the uneducated, Terry is a veteran production manager, is I suppose, the best way of putting a title on what you've done generically. Is that right?
Well, production manager and assistant director, because I was very lucky in my career. I was able to create a role which isn't normally accepted, which is that of working as a production manager and an assistant director. And unfortunately, with the newer films, there's so much paperwork and nonsense goes on now. They will always try and split the production manager from the assistant director. But I've been very lucky in my career. It was nepotism. I got into the industry through my uncles and my dad. And part of that is I want to help youngsters now. I'm part of Creative Media Skills at Pinewood, and we run courses on how to be an assistant director and production manager. And in fact, my greatest claim to fame is that I'm an honorary professor at De Montfort University in Leicester in media and film studies. And it's I adore it. In fact, I prefer doing that to actually working on films, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and not getting into bed till very late. But I've had a wonderful time. I've travelled the world, and the thing that's galvanised me into joining Facebook was I've met people all around the world that I wanted to stay in touch with, and it's that side of it that I get so upset that when we just look inward in our country, of course we've got awful problems we've got to sort out, but there's problem worldwide that we've got to reach out and still try and solve. And I try and do that through Facebook. I try and do that through the teacher. I had a wonderful girl in the class earlier this year. It was now after we did the class. She said to me, should she start getting work straight away? I said, no, go travelling. And so she's travelling around the world at the moment. And then when she'll come back, I will definitely take her on part of my team. But it is so important. My wife is making faces at my fish and chips as arrive, which is very embarrassing.
Your wife is very lovely, by the way. Can I just say that? From what I've seen, just theoretically on Facebook, on the rare occasions that you do share that insight, very talented, beautiful, wonderful Susie.
She is a superb script supervisor, and we first met working on a film, many years ago. She won't like me to tell you how long ago that was. And I pursued her for a year and a half.
Oh, name the film, we'll just figure it out.
Oh, no, in fact, it was Michael Winterbottom's first television series after he'd been an editor at Thames Television and he wanted to move into directing before he started his career with Butterfly Kiss, which was the first major film he did with Saskia Reeves and Amanda Plummer, which both Susie and I worked on. We worked with him on this wonderful...
extraordinary, talented ladies.
Oh, it was a nightmare of a shoot. I won't go into that now. But the Time Riders, the TV series we did, I'm hoping that with all this retro telly stuff until it gets shown again. Hayden Gwynn played the lady who was travelling back in time, and it was great fun. Yeah, Ian McNeice was in it playing her. They ended up back in the Civil War, English Civil War, and we used sealed knock for all our background actors.
Well, Ian McNeice does a lot of work down my way these days because he's in Doc Martin.
Oh, I love Doc Martin. I'd love the opportunity. Unfortunately, I won't ever get the opportunity. I'd love to have worked on that. So I love that series.
Well, I have to show you around the places.
Yeah, but no, the great thing about that was we used sealed knock for all the extras because obviously they had all the clobber, all the weapons and all the gear, but only one of them could act. So the first time I sort of had a row with my wife was I got this said actor, lovely lad, to play himself as a cavalier, shooting himself as a roundhead. And as a script supervisor, she said, "No, you're ruining everybody." I said, "Listen, my granny could play a blooming cavalier with those soppy wigs and hats." So we got away with that, but she's very, very good at noticing little things that go wrong.
Now, before you do disappear, if you do have to disappear or whatever, and we can save you for a sequel, I'm just going to name drop the key franchise that both you and Susie have worked on. It may be familiar to a few people. James Bond. Anyone heard of it? I mean, it's a very small art house, independent sort of a thing. It's
Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
Great.
You like
that?
that?
I'll tell you what, the greatest thing and the saddest thing in the last couple of weeks has been Sir Roger Moore dying, because the very first James Bond film I worked on was The Man with the Golden Gun. And I was 18, I just finished my A-levels, and I started work on it. On my first day, Sir Roger used to like having chicken sandwiches brought to his dressing room at the end of the day when he finished filming, and I was so freaking nervous. He opened the door, and as he opened the door, I dropped the sandwiches on the floor. And he made a wonderful, so I'm supposed to be watching my figure. And he never changed. My dad worked with him on that wonderful film, The Man Who Haunted Himself, which, Sir Roger regarded as his favourite film.
Yeah. It was his best acting performance.
He never changed.
It was a great piece of acting.
As the one film he acted in. Now that's self-deprecating.
Yeah.
That tells you the man's attitude towards that work.
Well, I don't know if you saw, I got very upset with all the people on Facebook who immediately launched into he wasn't very good as James Bond. He wasn't the best James. But he not only did he play James Bond, he played the Persuaders. He was in the Persuaders. I don't know.
Well, I have to say, Terry, he wasn't my favourite James Bond either. Although he was my favourite actor to play James Bond because I loved the man and I went to see him live. But what I will say is, when all that was happening, I left it because it's just not appropriate. We've just lost a wonderful human being who got knighted for his work for charity. Let's not forget. I went to see him live because I absolutely adored him. And nitpicking over his portrayal of Bond is actually kind of irrelevant at that point.
Exactly. Well, the point I made was there have been several James Bonds. There was only ever going to be one Sir Roger Moore.
Yeah.
And to this day, if Bond did tomorrow, there are two iconic James Bonds, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, guys, I'm ever so sorry.
No, that's fine. Terry, before you go, can you just shout out again the plug for your creative media skills? Is there a website or something?
It's Creative Media Skills. It's run at Pinewood Studios.
Yeah.
And if you look it up on the internet, they run so many wonderful courses from makeup and costume, and we do production managing, assistant directing, are really worthwhile, and they're very, very well run. And in fact, there's a course coming up later in July, which Ian Smith, the producer, Smith is going to lecture on, about stepping up to being a line producer. So anybody that wants to move into films or is in films and television and wants to move up, they're wonderful courses to attend. Anyway, very best of luck, everybody.
Fantastic. And if you do come back with your fish and chips, with or without Susie, log on back again, but we'll have you in a sequel. So thank you for helping us launch, Terry.
No, we'll have you back.
All the very best to you.
Take care. God bless.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so who have we got left? We've got Lorella and Dave. You still here?
Yeah, we're still here.
Ladies first. You have to say.
No, I'm going to say one thing, because I'm not introducing ourselves. Yes, ladies first, but I just want to say Terry Bamber might just be my favourite person on Facebook, because he is just absolutely full to the brim with kindness as a human being.
Your second favourite. I mean, I'm obviously slightly further up. No, I know.
You're in the top 325.
Oh, I love. Thank you. You know, Dave, you're a very, very beautiful man. You've got a very soporific, soft voice. It's you're like Alan's deep bath. But I agree with you absolutely about Terry. But I think the sad.
By Dettol.
We're not supposed to talk about people when they're out of the room, so to speak. But the thing is, you're right about the compassion. The sad thing about it, and it's quite bittersweet even, is that, as he said himself earlier on, he feels things very deeply. So he feels, I suppose, a sense of disquiet or disharmony, and very much in the country at the moment. And movies are the one thing where, no matter what people's political persuasion, or, you could be in a room with, a Labour, a Tory, Liberal, Democrat, whoever, but you talk about movies, and number one, it'll get people away from politics, thank God. Number two, you're going to have an even bigger, better debate. And the wonderful thing about Terry's page is you get a little bit of both. And even he knows when to move away. He'll even say, okay, enough politics, here's a film story. And that's,
he doesn't want to hurt anyone, and you can see that he feels everything very deeply.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the fire at Grenfell, I think, shocked all of us. But of all the people I saw on Facebook, I felt Terry's pain more than anyone else I read on there.
That's incredibly good. It's really, yeah. I mean, it's bittersweet, I think, because it's sort of happy side, because we're talking about, an appreciation of someone's feeling. But the fact of the matter is, I think the whole country was devastated. So to be able to articulate anything that was different, and I agree with you on that, was that he was able to articulate from things that for many of us were just beyond words. And so he's if you can find him on Facebook and Twitter, please do follow him. And that course sounds absolutely excellent. I'm severely tempted to sign up for it myself.
You may have to just follow him on Facebook, because he's up to his friend limit.
Yeah.
He's got like a come one, come all attitude. So previously, had you sent him a friend request, he almost certainly would have accepted, but he's at his limit now. But I think you can follow people.
Wonderful.
And this guy has got decades of experience in the film industry. So just from following people who've been there and done it, it's worth it. But he's a lovely human being as well.
Terrific. Well, back to introductions then. Ladies first. Lorella.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Plug a project. Do whatever. You could leave it to me, but it would just take 6 hours talking about how brilliant you are. So, you're more succinct.
It'll probably take 12 hours of me games. I did talk quite a lot.
Let's not go too far now.
Anyway, so yes, hello David, and my name is Lorella. Hello James, you already know me. I work with the voice at the moment. I teach in pronunciation at the Royal Opera House to the young artists there. But that's exciting. But my real sort of heart lies with writing and characters and world building and also sort of basically creating anything. It can be anything from a film script to, well, I haven't done a film script, but I have done novels, but unpublished, to some mixed media art that I've been putting up on my Facebook group recently.
What's the name of the group, Lorella? In case you do want people to join, presumably you do.
Yeah. Please feel free. But if you just a little thing that if you do join, just once in a while say hi or post something, because if you're just in the background lurking, that's just.
What's it called?
It is called Le Salon des Arts.
That's German, isn't it?
No, that's French, dear.
Oh yeah, I knew that. I was just riffing. Terrific.
So yeah, I've also got an Instagram page as well where I just upload things which I find interesting, mostly made by me, sometimes inspired by things I see on Facebook or social media, or otherwise, I take pictures and photos as well and edit them sometimes. So basically anything to do with creating or building up characters as well. I just love characters, and I have quite a few favourite characters as well. So.
Well, to the uneducated person who can't see Lorella, she looks, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, not unlike Sean Young in Blade Runner and No Way Out. And I have seen Lorella.
So basically, she's got Kevin Costner on top of her as we speak.
Precisely. Kevin, go away. Go away. Go back to Waterworld or something. Make Waterworld 2.
Yeah, poor old Kev. I mean, yeah.
I did post the other day. I sort of said Tony Blair and Kevin Costner, who would win a fight? And the consensus was they'd just kill each other. It would be a draw. They'd bore each other to death, something.
What? Tony Blair? What?
A lot of people think...
I'm just looking at a Facebook profile picture in this. It's not actually a picture, but if the artwork is anything like accurate, she's got a hint of Kerry Russell about her.
Yes. Good. This is good. So, moving swiftly on, Dave, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I know you through my podcast, which is called You Expect Us to Talk, which is a film retrospective series. Started with the Bond films and just went on from there, and people seem to like it, so we still keep going. James and I have been talking a while, just from a mixture of him listening to what I do, but also conversations we have on Facebook, the sort of things James talks about, me telling him he's talking out of his arse, that sort of thing.
Filthy, dirty, disgusting language. Anyway, yes.
It has been that, let's do a podcast, and we've been talking about this for a little while. Now, it's not my podcast, it's James's podcast. I may or may not appear, depending on what James wants to do with it. But, it all starts from the fact that, bizarrely, this is the first time, apart from him doing impressions of people, I've actually heard his voice. And every time I think they're hearing me for the first time, I realise that actually they've heard about 200 hours of me.
Yeah, but I mean, actually, following on from the Terry thing, one of the things that and I'm saying this seriously, joking apart, that does come across in your podcasting and in your Facebook page is this: you do have a sort of a sardonic wit, and you do take the piss. But interesting thing. You tend to do so balanced with both an informed wit and a real sense of compassion. The reason that you don't let somebody, as you put it, talk through their arse is that, as you've pointed out, that can be dangerous. Misinformation can be dangerous, be it about film or about politics. And I just think that's why I thought that there was nobody else that I could think of that I would rather have launched the podcast with, because you're a masterclass in how to do it and how not to do it. And it shows how many other people are a masterclass in how not to do it, frankly. So,
Well, I don't know about that, but certainly it is very humbling to know that there are people around the world who listen to what I do. So that's really nice. We're not talking thousands, we're probably talking hundreds, I would imagine. But
Robert Darby listens?
It is really... Yeah, he does, actually.
So does the Pope.
The Pope, NASA.
Well, we can get the European Space Agency. I don't know about NASA, because we've done some work with the European Space Agency.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how James and I know each other. He sort of started listening to my podcast a while back.
Yeah, and then Dave said, "Get your own sodding podcast."
Well, it was kind of just a little bit of he would write to us and say what he thought about a particular podcast or ask questions or whatever, and it's gone from there.
Yeah. Okay. So on that note, let's just kicking off in terms of going through the papers, so to speak, because I do on sort of Andrew Marr or something like that. Less so with the politics, but we just start with movies and go from there, because there is an overlap. The main two things that occurred to me. One was the Han Solo movie has had its directors replaced. And the other is the collective surprise and yet almost I don't know, is it malicious glee with which people have talked about the downfall of this dark universe at Universal and the Mummy disappointing, if not flopping. And I see a sort of a slight thematic overlap with kind of what happened in politics, in the sense that you expect a surefire hit. There's a little bit of complacency maybe in the marketing, or a disagreement over the vision of what something is supposed to be, and then you get all hell breaking loose, be it online or actually, and then trying to retrieve the thing with some spin attached. So if either of you have any strong feelings on that one, or any insight.
I tell you what I will note about the Mummy. I don't quite see... I see one parallel with politics, but it's not actually the same one you've just said. In that the parallel with politics is, and I've been thinking about this an awful lot with the result of the election we just had. Unsuccessful parties not normally, but certainly frequently in the last few years, have kind of fought the wrong election. And I don't just mean they had a bad campaign. I mean, they were literally fighting a previous election, like they haven't moved with the times. If you look at the most recent election, the Tories did very little on social media. They did very little with the youth vote and people that would knock on doors and so on. I go back...
Very staid campaign, wasn't it? It was very sort of aimed at people.
Oh, it was a terrible campaign, actually. But it isn't just about its quality, it's about what are they actually fighting. They didn't sense this mood in the country that like, people are fucking sick of austerity. So they are just like, they're fighting about Brexit. And you think, well, the average person probably doesn't feel as passionate. But the one example, well, there's a couple of examples going back that I think in the 2001 election, William Hague went on two things. He went on Europe and the euro, and he also went on like shrinking the state. They had to basically hide Oliver Letwin because he started talking about 20 billion, but certainly Hague was talking about 8 billion of cuts. And that was an election that was after the first 4 years of New Labour, and people were starting to get annoyed that like public services weren't improving enough, or at least fast enough. So the mood of the public at that time was very much, you get what you pay for, put more money in, and tax us if you need. And Hague fought on like tax and spend Labour. Well, that worked. So basically what he was doing is fighting the 1992 election in 2001. And I think that 2010 was similar the other way round. Gordon Brown made it Labour investment against Tory cuts. Well, at that point, we just had a massive crash and the public were a little bit worried about, you know, all the scaremongering in the press about our deficit. So he was fighting the 1997 election in 2010. And the parallel with The Mummy is that they are trying to promote a film in 1985. In that star power isn't what it was. That when you look back through the back catalogue of Tom Cruise, nearly every DVD or Blu-ray or movie poster he's on is just his face, because that's all you really needed to do to sell it. Go and look at Vanilla Sky, which is an extraordinarily complex film, but the whole sales pitch for it was a picture of his face looking youthful and good looking, and that was it. And so was Minority Report, and so on. Now, what you've got with The Mummy is they are fighting a sort of big ticket star Hollywood name battle in an era where that's now no longer going to work. And had they looked back through Tom Cruise's record in recent years, they would have actually seen that he does pretty well. I mean, he does. But, you know, it's not like there are Tom Cruise films out there that have made $1 billion. There aren't. So that's the one parallel with politics I wanted to point out, that when you are not successful, it tends to be because you're fighting a battle from like several years before. Yeah,
that's very interesting. And I think that particularly about Tom Cruise, because he is capable of playing a villain himself. I mean, when I first heard about it, I thought, wow, maybe they're going to make him Dracula, or they're going to, you know, I'm not going to give away spoilers because you get murdered for it.
It was very good in Interview with a Vampire. I thought it was Lestat, you know.
Did you like the production design of that, don't you, Lorella? Like, it's a visually sumptuous film, isn't it?
It's beautiful visually. I mean, I'm sort of remembering it as I sort of speak to you. And I'm not a great fan of Tom Cruise, but I will recognise that he is a very good actor in the sense that he can get very sort of embroiled in what he does, and what's the word I'm looking for? Immersed. That's the word. So immersed in what he does, and so therefore this sort of obsession almost, I think, which can be a little bit scary, is actually creates an effect on the audience, whereby it draws the audience in, and he is actually quite good at that. I'm thinking of The Firm as well, which is quite some time ago now. But yes, the start and the interview with the vampire, just talking about it aesthetically from a purely sort of, is it production point of view?
Yeah, production design, yeah.
Then yes, the costumes were absolutely sumptuous. I think Brad Pitt could have put a little bit more effort into the character.
Well, he was very depressed. He was very depressed making that by his own admission.
Yes, of course. Well, he was he? Oh, right, behind the scenes. Okay. Well, I don't know. I mean,
it was before he met Angelina. And that's another overlap with politics, because the thing that finished William Hague in politics was not the disastrous 2001 Save the Pound campaign. It was the fact that he and Angelina basically became this global super Avengers force that are going to bring world peace together. So politics and him were finished because he doesn't need it anymore. He's going to save the world with Angelina. It's I think Brad felt very left out. It's grounds for divorce in itself.
Angelina went for William Hague instead of Brad Pitt.
Well, no. Hang on, we don't want to get sued. She didn't go for him. But they formed a kind of an ideological
charity. He just walked in and took her. He knows what he wants.
Yeah, he's that kind of guy, is William. You know, I mean, if you've had the lovely.
He said about 14 pints.
This is not true. This is satirical. You know, we're not William Hague's people. We're not actually accusing
14 pints is true if you believe him.
And Angelina Jolie, we're not accusing you in any way of doing things, sex stuff or otherwise, with William Hague.
We're accusing you of doing William Hague.
That's just as pure.
At the Tory Party conference in 1977 when he was 15. You dirty, dirty girl.
And you have evidence for this? Do you have photographic evidence of Angelina with William?
No, but I've just done a little sketch.
Yeah, we can Photoshop. Amazing what you can do with Photoshop. But yeah, I mean, back
Bob
on.
Chelton's involved in my drawing.
But back onto production design. The Mummy, the new one. I just didn't see a visual scheme to it, because when I first saw the trailer, I thought, is this Mission Impossible 17 or whatever? Because the bit on the plane and everything, and it just blended into whatever Tom Cruise had done in Jack Reacher or Mission Impossible 5, and we're awaiting Mission Impossible 6, where he's recruited, I think, Henry Cavill on board, and there's more of a team aspect to it. So I was just thinking, I may as well skip the Mummy and just wait for what's inevitably going to be the superior Mission Impossible film next year. It just didn't seem to be anything different, either in terms of horror or in terms of adventure. It was a sort of nebulous kind of nothing in between. And as you say, Dave, quite rightly, it would have been fine at his Top Gun peak phase, but now he should be playing, I suppose, with Mission Impossible aside, more textured, detailed characters that he's more than capable of. You go all the way back to Rain Man and, as I say, Interview with the Vampire. So that was what disappointed me.
Rain Man might even still be one of his best performances.
I would agree with that. And
he did that at, 26?
Yeah, and he has the harder job in some senses than Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, I do think he was the best thing in that film, genuinely.
Yeah.
He was very layered. I mean, he managed to put across a character which could have been very easily, if he took the easy route, sort of this cliched sort of angry brother. Is it brother? Yeah.
Character. Yeah, they're brothers. Yeah.
But he managed to, if I remember correctly, I saw it a few years ago now. But he did manage to put that balance of tenderness as well, with that sort of frustration that probably one would feel if you had a brother like that with that condition. So it's quite human. That's what I'm saying, that he can put across this sort of very human and passionate character phase, if you like. But he can also, on the other hand, he can be a little bit sort of like too much, like very self-absorbed and almost like a spoiled child. If that's okay.
It's that grim. I mean, I actually think one of his most underrated films is Vanilla Sky, which I mentioned earlier. I'm quite a big fan of that film, but I would think I'm in a minority. Not a tiny minority.
You're in a minority report. Get it?
Yeah, but I mean, Minority Report was the same film, same year, sorry.
Yeah.
And I didn't really like that film anywhere near as much, whereas Vanilla Sky is a remake. And it got a tough time, and I actually really, really like it. But there's no doubt in the first 20, 25 minutes of that film, I remember reading a review which got it bang on. They said after like half an hour, you're going to be sick of his shit-eating grin. And it's absolutely true. He is so smug in the first sort of half an hour of that film until his life starts going wrong. Now that actually suits the character in that film, but there's no doubt it does bleed into Tom Cruise performances now and again.
Yeah.
Even something really good like Jerry Maguire.
Yeah. He's read every single book ever written.
I agree with you, Dave, in what you say about that grin of his, that sort of smug grin, that's when he sort of begins to lose it. It's when he's sort of, like aware that he's there, and it's all about me. But as I say, when he's not, I mean, it's really weird, isn't it, how we can pick up on this, just this actor. He has that sort of ability, those sort of different colour palettes, if you like, available to him as an actor. And he manages to do that really well, I think, in another film, Eyes Wide Shut.
Oh, I love that.
Which is a brilliant film in itself. I think
I've reviewed that on a podcast.
It's just so imbued with atmosphere.
Is that on Cinematronics?
It's electric.
No, I reviewed that on PolitFlix.
All right. Is that still available? Still around? Give it a plug.
Ask AJ Black. He's in my film. He's in my friend list.
Will do. Because I think that's another very complicated one that people either love or hate.
He did about 20 episodes of that, and I was on about a quarter of them. So there's another like 5 or 6 of me to listen to on that. But one of the episodes we did Eyes Wide Shut, and I think it was Crimson Tide in the same episode.
Now that is a wonderful film. I mean, it's literate. It's still a blockbuster. It's still eye candy and so on. But it has philosophical texture and theme without just lecturing the audience. It's actually
the blueprint that if not that anyone would ever ask me, but if someone was to say, I want to do a modern Star Trek series. Can you give me some reference points that aren't Star Trek? I'd hand them Crimson Tide.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Star Trek is supposed to be kind of submarine thriller in space, isn't it? I suppose.
It is. But
with philosophical dialogue, which is what the Abrams reboot kind of just missed. They just didn't get it. There wasn't, and that doesn't mean you make it boring. This is another. Plinkett points that out very well in his reviews. They're the Red Letter Media ones that everybody.
I've seen them all.
He just points out that Star Trek can be textured and have the philosophical dialogue without being boring. It doesn't. And there was this assumption that you had to that every Star Trek film now has to be a grisly wannabe Wrath of Khan revenge thriller. Well, no, it can have a tense, thrilling conflict of interest, a philosophical discussion about that, and some action.
I've seen The Undiscovered Country for details.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful, wonderful film again. And parallels. We talk about politics and film. Star Trek 6.
Just sort of going back to Tom Cruise briefly, though. I do wonder whether it's possible to sort of slam two brands together like that. That you put Tom Cruise in a film. Mission Impossible almost doesn't count because the brand has grown alongside him.
Yeah.
But you put him into something. It jarred when I saw the trailers.
Yeah.
That they're clearly trying to build this cinematic universe, which they think that's the lesson to take away from the Avengers, but that's fine. Okay, if you want to build a cinematic universe, that's okay. But they think it's just a question of putting a star in it. And I read somewhere that their wish list, and it was like Jennifer Lawrence.
She's on my wish list.
Well, she's on my wish list, but not for a film I'm making or anything. No, I mean, joking aside, there's no invention in that. That is simply naming famous people. And I just a little bit disjointed because I'm covering the Batman series on my other podcast at the moment.
Yeah.
And I remember that when Nolan did The Dark Knight, after that, the studio said to him, so who's next then? The Riddler? It's got to be Leonardo DiCaprio.
Leo.
And I'm thinking, well, you've named the second most famous, villain after the Joker, and you've named the most, well-known and popular actor in Hollywood. There's no invention in that.
Mm. Although Christian Bale versus Leo would have been an awesome film.
I'd have been happy with it as an idea, but only had the filmmaker had a vision that encompassed that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with doing a film that's got the Riddler and it's Leonardo DiCaprio playing the Riddler in it.
Yeah.
But
don't make him the Riddler just because they want to stick in.
Because that's what we do next. Is not any kind of vision. And when you look at the Nolan films, whatever their pluses and minuses, they have themes.
Yeah.
The first theme was about fear and conquering your fear. The second film was about escalation and dealing with sort of the anarchy that comes out of that. And he chose it each.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I agree with you. I think that a lot of films, when they start to be star-centered, are they lose that sort of story aspect to them, and the characters in particular. And like we were saying just now, if it's themed, like the Batman films, has so many themes in it. It's ranging from insanity to complete and utter depression to highs and lows and everything. And I'll talk about Harley Quinn later on if you want, James.
Only if you dress up as her. But I can't see you, so
Yeah, come round and talk about her in person.
Why not? I'm practicing my squeaky voice. So, yeah, you're right. I think that just writing as well, my favourite sort of novel, film, or any sort of experience is when it's themed and when it has characters that portray these themes in a way which is put across
but what battle are you fighting? Again, it's almost in line with the stuff we've just said about elections and stuff. If you are making the 1989 to 1997 Batman series, where they seemed at least to start every film with which villain? Oh, the Joker. Who's the next most famous? The Penguin. You can argue that, or the Riddler. Who's the next most famous? The Riddler, Two-Face. Who's the next most famous? And so you go on. And had they got to about 6, it would have been like the Clock King or something.
Calendar man.
They were running out of ideas. Now, that's fine. If you are making that kind of series, there's nothing wrong with going, well, we haven't got the Riddler yet, and who's going to play him?
Yeah.
But that doesn't fit the Nolan series.
So what's the theme of Dark Knight Rises then? I'm interested in this one. What's your take on that one?
The theme of The Dark Knight Rises is very like Skyfall. It's about relevance.
Yeah.
It's about sort of readiness and relevance in that law enforcement have got a little bit complacent because they've had relatively little crime.
Yes.
So they've got a bit, metaphorically speaking, sort of fat around the belly. They're not as sharp. You've got Batman who just thinks he has to put the suit on. I mean, he hasn't for years, but when he comes back, he does still think he's just putting the suit on. And it's about the relevance of the whole point of The Dark Knight, and I know you're talking about Rises, but the whole point of The Dark Knight was, well, not the whole point, but one of the sub-themes of The Dark Knight was he was trying to make himself effectively redundant. That's why he clung so much to Harvey Dent, because he thought here is a legal, within the system, way of achieving what I'm trying to do, and I might be able to retire and be with Rachel. Now, of course, he did effectively make himself obsolete. I'm not overly chuffed with the way the film handled it, or the cross between the two films handled it, if you like. But by the time you get to like Rises, Batman is no longer that relevant. It kind of isn't. They've gone on for 8 years without him, and things have improved.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit like Skyfall. It's readiness and relevance.
I mean, they're basically the same film in many ways. I mean, what's interesting is that, and I think this was the mistake that Spectre made to some extent in following up Skyfall. At the end of Skyfall, you have the image of Bond stood on that roof looking at London. That is his family. The equivalent to that is Batman discovering at the end of Dark Knight Rises, yeah, I can have a normal life. I've done my bit as Batman. I'm Bruce Wayne. I've set things up in motion if they need Batman again or if they need me. It's probably not going to last with Catwoman anyway because she's trouble, and Catherine Florence, they'll have a row or something, they'll break up or whatever. But the fact of the matter is you had both of those images. Whereas Spectre tries to then repeat beat for beat that kind of ending to Dark Knight Rises, giving him closure with a woman. Whereas for Bond, his closure was acknowledging, well, no, I probably can't have that kind of coziness because that's not me. My job is to not be cozy. Whereas in Batman's case, Batman was the method rather than the aim. Whereas with Bond, I think very much so, the character is that his method is his aim. And he has to accept that.
Spectre understands that it understands one thing and doesn't understand another. It understands that it is in a new timeline. So you can have Bond effectively relearning lessons that perhaps we saw the original continuity through to 2002 experience. But what it doesn't acknowledge is the audience, that we saw Bond try domesticity before.
Yeah.
And he ended up with a bullet in her head.
Yeah. I don't think they'll... I mean, if they don't reboot after this one, if they do go into another Bond movie with Lea Seydoux, bless her, there are so many things they can do. She can be a villain, or she could just dump him off screen. It could just be...
Which is what happened in the books when he got together with... I think it might have been Gala Brand.
Yeah.
I do get a bit mixed up between...
No, Gala Brand, at the end of the Moonraker novel, Gala Brand, it's far more brutal in many senses and pathetic and typical of Fleming. Even more so than the death of Tracy. Bond, literally, like a romantic idealist, is swanning off to meet Gala Brand at the end of the mission, which saved the day. And she goes, yeah, sorry, but I've got a boyfriend, I've got a fiancé.
And it's kind of the next book where he's explaining to him, like, it didn't work.
Yeah, and I think they could do that. And I think that would inject the continuity and the relevance and give it that kind of emotional literacy that they've had since Casino Royale without having to do another...
There's a balance, James. There's a balance between producer-led series and director-led series.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the Bond series is producer-led in that it's led by the people who own the overall vision, if you like.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean they know what they're going to do in 20 years' time. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
But the danger with bringing in a director and saying, do whatever you want is, he tries to close out his saga.
Yeah. So that's what Sam did.
Close out Bond.
Yeah. Well, that's what Sam did, I think, kind of. And what Daniel was part of.
Yeah, exactly that. You cannot close out Bond. You can do it with Batman because...
The continuity is so flexible anyway.
Well, not only that, we keep telling different universes. It might be different now there's a DC universe.
Yeah.
But before that, it's just reboot, make him look a bit different, you know?
But that's where the Han Solo thing comes in, because Lord and Miller, who've just been sacked, and it was a sacking, make no mistake, it's not, I mean, they said creative differences. Well, the long and the short of it is you can view it one of two ways. You can say, what the hell was Kathleen Kennedy doing, allowing them to be hired in the first place if they pitched their vision? The other thing is you can say, well, actually, what she was trying to do, she was trying not to micromanage them. They had a rough pitch, and they went off task about halfway through, and they were riffing and they were improvising. And Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote the thing, had to step in and say, look, Han Solo is funny, but he's funny in reaction to other characters. He's not a laugh-a-second joker. He is supposed to be a quasi-serious archetype who, nevertheless, generates comedy in the clashes with other characters and in his own limitations, which he doesn't initially recognize. And that's very different. A bit like Indiana Jones from, hey, look at me, I'm funny, I think.
In my opinion, Han Solo, just thinking about it, character-wise, you mentioning comedy, it's not actually, as you were saying, I don't think he's like, comedy as such. I think he's very wry and he's lippy, because that's the way that he sort of, he sort of puts his own, if you like, heroism across, because you've got Luke Skywalker there, who's a great force in himself, to use a pun if you like, but as a character, he's growing alongside Han Solo. I'm thinking about the older Star Wars films.
Yeah.
But Han Solo is sort of almost like he's like the boy at school that's trying to compete with him, but wants to be friends with him as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he uses that sort of humor and that sort of sarcasm, to as his lightsaber, if you like. So,
yeah. And I think, as I say, you want to give a director some creative vision, but if it's going to reinvent a character completely, when the whole property is based around a perception of that character, I think, why not give it to a safer pair of hands like Ron Howard and retrieve what you've got? It doesn't have to be a bad reflection on their competence, but, a clash of vision is just that, and beloved characters have to be just that. They have to be, protected, I suppose.
Sorry, I don't know if you guys walk into me or think I might step away for a second.
Is that Jehovah's Witnesses, Dave? You told me you're spoken for. So yeah, and I think the other thing I'd point out is that the common thread, if we go right back to the beginning, is the mood of the nation and how that reflects on the franchises and vice versa. Skyfall and Dark Knight Rises, I have a particular soft spot for, because in 2012, certainly compared with now, the country just felt good. Whether that was, in retrospect, a little bit manufactured, but we had the Olympics, the Jubilee.
Yeah, the Olympics.
Yeah, there was a pervasive air of optimism and possibility. And what's very interesting is that you get those two blockbusters in the same year with differing characters, but with the same, I suppose, schematic in the sense that you can dip in and out of their mythology, reinvent it, different actors or whatever. But two movies in which the characters were defined by being broken down and rebuilt. And the imagery, the plot, the story revolved around that. In terms of Han Solo, well, obviously that was released, the first Star Wars, 77, once again, a Jubilee year. It had a terrific Bond movie, Spy Who Loved Me, which, God rest his soul, Roger Moore was in. So you had this sense of a national mood, an international mood, and a change in the way that cinema was being made. And I think right now, the world could really use a bit of that old optimism. We need, more than ever, I think, some good old-fashioned pastiche cinema heroics.
I agree with you, James. I mean, I think that's why La La Land was so popular. I mean, even though it is quite a sort of, it's not a sort of traditional musical as such, without giving too much away. But it seems to be the case that that we as a society, or Western society at least, needed a sort of outlet for something which was out of, just totally, people singing and tap dancing again, as they needed during the Second World War, in the 1930s. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I think so. And I think what's interesting as well, just before we wrap up, is that one of the things that's, irresistible on the one hand, and yet frustrating, are the amount of memes that have been, is that how you pronounce it? Memes? How do you pronounce it? Meme? M-E-M-E? Mem? What, those internet things? Yeah.
Oh, do you mean a memes? Yeah.
A meme, yeah. Is that the people keep, some idiots, some dickhead out there actually sits down and makes these things, right? Which says, oh, during the Blitz, they didn't have time to hashtag and write peace and love and thoughts and prayers every time a German bomb fell. We didn't, and you want to say that's because they didn't have social media back then, and we've been trained over several.
Were kind of preoccupied as well, and I doubt we would be if we were being bombed.
No, because we'd have someone to fight back against, and that's what people don't seem to get at the moment.
The other one I love is, like, you'll get people who are just a touch older than me, 5 to 10 years older than me, and it will say, they grew up in the 70s, and it will say, we did this, we did this, we did that, and it didn't do us any harm. And it would be like eating fucking tar and, like, diving off buildings head first and stuff, and it did us no harm. And it's almost to imply that health and safety is mental.
Yeah, well, which, as has been proven.
But didn't Grenville just teach us that there are, there's nothing wrong with actually trying to be safe.
Yeah. And it's down to the individual to choose within that, provided that as far as is possible. But I do think,
an institutionalized national attitude that, like, it doesn't matter is not necessarily in and of itself a golden age.
Yeah, and that's why we have these escapist heroes, so that you can have, if you're not going to try bungee jumping, and if you know deep down that you're actually quite frightened of what's happening in the country at the moment, but you're not going to, if the Dark Knight Rises type situation happens in Birmingham tomorrow and Bane takes control of the city, it's actually not going to be on you to save the day. Watching a film like that, like The Dark Knight Rises or a Skyfall, or, even getting lost in something more frivolous but not quite comedic, like, say, Han Solo or whatever in a Star Wars adventure, means that you get that vicarious sense of adventure and a sense of closure on it, and you, without necessarily having to step into the danger, understanding that there are real life professionals who deal with that sort of thing. And that this kind of Facebook discussion, it's a trap I fall into myself sometimes, where the danger of saying it's all about you, that you have to specifically solve this or have something different to say. Well, sometimes you don't. And it's probably the safer thing to do. And this is why these film franchises are so important and must keep getting made, especially now, is to be able to step back into a vicarious fantasy, but have some measure of the reality that got you there in the first place, the thing that you want to escape or express. And I think if there's one thing that unites the themes from all that we've talked about, it's been a very rich discussion, and I'm very pleased with it. But obviously I can't keep you here against your will all night. That's it, is the sense that right now I think, just like Gotham City, where we need these heroes, but we need to be very careful about who we nominate in that role, even in the realm of fantasy, because
we need those villains as well.
Yeah, I mean, and the great thing about a Joker or whoever is that they personify what we're frightened of, and we don't have that at the moment either. We need that.
I mean, how many parallels can you? Obviously not to such an extreme, but or maybe to the extreme, can you find of aspects of the Joker amongst the political landscape nowadays? I mean, it's just insanity. And unreason and sort of this, well, I wouldn't go so far as saying sadistic, because I hope they don't do it in a sadistic way, but this sort of craziness about from one thing to another. From one day to another, they change the manifestos, they change the way that they're going. They seem to live in this sort of fantasy world where, you know, Britannia rules the waves and everything, and it seems to be a little bit sort of, well, maybe it's more Queen Elizabeth at the time.
But the thing is,
I don't think we've ever recovered from being an empire.
No. And the thing, even Bond, to some extent, you're watching something that the imagery of that, I mean, they're very modern now and they're very gritty and real. And all the rest
they
of it,
are, but it's the same thing.
But it's the imagery of Empire is still there, and it's still a fantasy. You can sit down. My point is, the next time that, I don't know, whoever it is, be it not me, hypothetically, but whoever on Facebook feels like sitting down and writing a status where they're single-handedly trying to resurrect the British Empire or speak for the entire nation, maybe just take a deep breath, have a cup of tea, and stick on even 5 minutes of a Bond movie and say, right, that's how I express that. Not through creating this sort of pseudo-persona whereby it's 1945 again, or 1939 even, and I'm flying into the rescue single-handed to take on Britain First, Islamic State, whoever else is the big bad of the day, and you know, happily ever after. Because unfortunately the real world isn't like that, which is why we have these wonderful movies. But there you have it. Anyway, guys, I am enormously conscious. I hate to cut this off, but I'm enormously conscious of the fact that this is such a pleasure. I could go on all night just listening to you guys, or just listening to my own voice. And I think that would be detrimental and dangerous, and something else beginning with D, but I'm losing the words now because it's Friday night. I must let you go. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Anything, final thoughts? Dave, where can we find you, as you would say?
Well, you can find our podcast at Expect Us to Talk on Twitter, facebook.com/Expect Us to Talk, and you can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
Thank you very much. And Lorella, just a reminder, what's your group on Facebook again?
It's called Le Salon des Arts, and Art is ARTS.
And well, I'm James Murphy, and everybody knows where to find me. And Terry, we gave the details for earlier on. Thank you, David. Thank you, Lorella. This could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Take care. God bless.
Take care.
Bye now.